The two main types of long-term memory that the brain carries out are referred to as declarative and non-declarative memory. Declarative memory is how our brain processes and represents the external world that we live in, and we use this kind of memory when we talk on a daily basis. There are two major components of declarative memory. One is semantic memory, and this is essentially just facts about the world and the facts that we know in general. The other component is episodic memory, which refers to the events that have personally occurred to us and allow us to replay or re-experience any time or event. This occurs by the ways of the medial temporal lobe diencephalon, which actually consists of the hippocampus, amygdala, and the parahippocampal region. Basically, the function of this is to carry out the processes of encoding, consolidating information, and retrieving information. Next, we moved on to the non-declarative department, and this is basically just our unconscious, and it's based on performance rather than recollection like declarative memory is. First, we have the striatum. This is responsible for procedural memory, which consists of skills and habits, and this can be explained by a trial and error type of learning that leads to our habits, and this was discovered in the 1980s and has been heavily studied since then. So the habit memory that is occurring in the striatum is characterized by repetitive behavior or actions, and unlike declarative memory, it's insensitive to changes in reward value and will continue being a habit. These habits coordinate with other brain regions. Next, we have the reflex pathways, which are responsible for non-associative learning and are changes in behavior relating to repeated exposure to certain stimuli. This is because there are many nerves in this pathway that are focused on the stimulus, and it's a fundamental form of learning that guides our behavior. Then we have the neocortex, which is when we have an experience. The neocortex is activated and long-term storage is distributed during different parts of the neocortex. And this is essentially how it conducts priming and perceptual learning. Priming refers to the improved ability to detect or classify an item based on previous encounters we've had with the stimuli or something very close to it. In terms of psychology, this is essentially a form of classical condition, but it's slightly different from the simple classical conditions that we will discuss later in this video. So back to priming, it is part of our perceptual fluency, and it's not an expression, but instead it's more of a perception. For example, patients who are memory impaired still have their priming effects intact because it doesn't depend on pre-existing memory representation, but instead it depends on cues for our conscious judgments of familiarity. Because it's based on familiarity, priming improves the speed and efficiency with which organisms interact and perceive familiar stimuli or familiar environments, which affects their attentional processes. Then we have the amygdala, which is involved in simple classical conditioning. More specifically, it generates emotional responses that happen in the brain. Brain imaging studies have shown it's activated by emotional events, and this is because the amygdala boosts memory retention by triggering the release of stress hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol to boost arousal. It also enhances our attention and perception, which helps memory retention. However, it can also be activated by fear and cause the prefrontal cortex to provide defensive barriers if needed. Although the amygdala is listed here under non-declarative memory, it can also be involved in declarative memory because it has to do with events that are important to us that cause these emotions. Lastly, we have the cerebellum. This is also responsible for simple classical conditioning behaviors, but in terms of skeletal responses. This pretty much just means that the cerebellum regulates the body's muscle actions and it makes them move in response to stimuli. The cerebellum can also help maintain balance. So that pretty much covers all the main brain regions that are involved in both declarative and non-declarative memory, which, as I said before, are part of the brain's long-term memory. And I just wanted to note that this is the original flowchart I based the previous two slides on, and the journal is in the link below. Thank you for watching.